Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has had with the various leaders across the continent, but more so even with the US, etc. But you take a look at the subcontinent where we are, the incursions by the terrorists, you come from the Sahelian regions, the concerns that have been raised by those countries in there, and then also how we need to consolidate that peace. You see that despite our differences, we're doing right by ourselves. Pargrave.
Yes, very much. President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo set a very good precedence, chairing the sub-region of ECOWAS, 2-term. You are aware as well that the President-elect John Dramani Mahama was also a chair of the ECOWAS Heads of State. There's clear indications of solidarity from the sub-region, and I'm glad to see that President Tinubu is here. He is now the chair of ECOWAS. So it's going to be a very interesting rendition of our democracy. I've received indications that our sitting Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and flag bearer in the 2024 general elections would also be at the swearing in, which goes a lot more into deepening of the democracy and the fact that we are one people. The fact that we have been able to transition from one government onto another government, the fact that we have one country to govern, and despite our different political persuasions and orientations, we want to be able to see that Ghana works. We want to be able to see that the vision Ghana is achieved and accomplished by everyone that is so given the opportunity. And His Excellency John Dramani Mahama hasn't got a lot of time to waste. He has to hit the ground running almost immediately. Prof was talking about the 24-hour economy. We are aware that it does work in other countries. My simple definition that I gave to the 24-hour economy is that John Dramani Mahama hasn't got a lot of time, so he has to work 3 times to be able to achieve what he has to achieve. And so for me, after we lost our election, I needed to now prepare myself into the reset agenda of the incoming government. And in recent times, I've been studying the NDC manifesto because we want to be able to keep to full prove and test all the things that they mentioned in the manifesto and the promises that were made.
All right, so a lot more dignitaries arriving on the ground, and Komla Kluche will give us all those updates, and it's now.
Okay, many thanks to you in the studio as well. It's still the continuous coverage of the inaugural ceremony of the President-elect John Dramani Mahama. Well, a lot of dignitaries continue to arrive. The former heads of state are arriving, and there's been a lot of cheers from among the crowd. It's been excitement, it's been ecstatic and all that. But let's still get some reactions from people who are hearing. Professor Richard Asiedu is the Central Regional Chairman of the NDC. For you, what made the trick briefly in terms of securing the Central Region?
Thank you, my brother. Central Region is a very diverse region with a lot of tribes. And so they term the place as a swing region. It's a swing region because we don't have the same perception about people and about politics. So winning the Central Region is always a Herculean task. So all the time people tell us, we give you the vice presidential candidate slot, yet you don't deliver. They think that Central Region is the only the Fanti constituencies. Central Region spans from Ewutu, we have Efutu, we have the Senya people, we have the Agona, we have the Gumua, we have the Fantimai, we have the Bremai, we have the Kumfi, we have Dangerous, we have the Asens, and we have the Chufu. So all this group of ethnic groups forms the Central Region, as I told you. So we have to devise strategies to suit every constituency before we could win the seat.
We do not have the luxury of time, but for you, what's your expectation? Briefly.
My expectation is that Central Region needs development and we need jobs. And the president has promised that he's going to use the eastern corridor of Central Region to build factories and also promote industries to help us get jobs for our teeming youth. That is our hope, and that is our mission that the government should do it for us.
Many thanks, Professor Richard Asiedu is the Central Regional Chairman of the NDC. let's get some other view from sir, congratulations in order to you as one person who has a keen interest in the politics of this country. What for you remains your expectation of the president-elect?
Very good morning to your viewers. One would say a lot of people have, expectations are very high. But looking at John Dramani Mahama, what he's done before and what he said in his manifesto, I must say that he's going to deliver. I believe in him. He's going to deliver.
And when should Ghanaians start counting down for him?
Today is the first day, and so he gave us about 120 days promise. And so Ghanaians should be patient and then wait for him. I know he's going to deliver because he has done it before. This is not the first time he is going to sit on this seat. He's seen it before. And so when he says it, they should believe in him.
Okay, many thanks. Dr. George Sipayanke, a veteran, a former boss of the Ghana Gas Company. What are you expecting of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama today?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners. It's only me alone. A lot of Ghanaians have got expectation from the president, and based on our party manifesto and the promises that he made, I'm sure a lot of them are going to expect rapid and speedy restoration of the economy, so that they can also enjoy the benefit of a very good economy. You know what? President Mahama has lined up a solid team of people who are ready to move and shake the foundations of our economy so that they can reset the economy by removing all the structural bottlenecks so that Ghana will begin to grow. Because until we do the restructuring of the economy, all the efforts that have been made will lead us nowhere. We continue going to the IMF. And and it's important that Mahama has made it clear, he is coming to focus on the real sector of the economy. So that is the way we can grow the economy.
Real sector of the economy will not happen if the energy sector is not. We'll come back to you again. Let me take a few thoughts from you, sir. Sir, what's your name?
Francis Agbozo.
Francis Agbozo. What's your expectation?
I expect that everything should go on well today. I expect that everything should go smoothly because this is what Ghanaians want and they have it. So I want it to go smoothly.
All right. Many thanks. Well, I've been joined by my colleague Eric Mawina Egbeta, who will be doing much of the commentary. It's been long and very stressful for media general and TV3 as well. For you, this wraps up everything. What's your expectation?
Well, like you mentioned, the long road is almost nearing its end with this. And the anticipation continuing to build up. We can only look forward to what is expected to happen, and particularly that inaugural speech that will be delivered by the president-elect, who shortly will be sworn in as well. That really will herald what his intentions are. It's been a long drawn battle for him up until this point. He's campaigned strongly on the promise of resetting almost everything in this country, and a number of questions that have been asked as well. We cannot tell really what's making the crowd.
Yeah, we cannot see because a good number of people have been told that if you are inside the cordoned off area, you cannot see what is happening. But those who are in the popular stand, quote unquote, they are really enjoying what those who are arriving and all that. We cannot see and do not know.
Absolutely, but we know that the former president John Agyekum Kufuor has arrived. We caught wind of that announcement when it came through as well, and then a host of other dignitaries. I've seen the U.S. ambassador as well make her way through, members of parliament.
Like Jonathan as well, he bypassed that a short while ago and denied us an interview, even though.
Well, so a host of dignitaries expected to be here. We've been hearing from even speaking that the sheer number of individuals who are deciding to be a part, heads of state from the West African sub-region and then other parts of the continent and then the rest of the world, perhaps should be a sign for many who are watching from their homes that perhaps the good tides may be returning to the good people of Ghana. But again, I make the
traditional rulers, especially key paramount chiefs across the length and breadth of the country, making their way onto the ground, the Black Star Square, live coverage of these events. And we're hoping that this will be one of them. The Asante Hene also leading that entourage there from the Kingdom of Asante. Kofi Adams, the Member of Parliament for Boem, alongside other dignitaries and parliamentarians, also well seated, interacting as they also await the formal commencement of this historic presidential inauguration of John Dramani Mahama, the second time coming of him, just taking over from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, alongside his vice president, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who, by the way, is also there, and the Phantom from Ban, from the Ghana Dance Ensemble, well placed, as well as the other cultural troops, also displaying traditional regalia, dance, renditions of songs, representing tradition, culture across Ghana for this very day. On your screens, and if you're just listening on 3FM 92.7, also those Noche dancers walking back, representing when the herds of the Volta region migrated from Noche in the present-day Togoland to Ghana, all be represented right here at the Black Star Square. Remember this coverage. We as a team, myself, Pakwesi, Nashoko, will be wrapping up, and then we have the next team also coming in. The fire chief officer also, as well as other officers of the Ghana National Fire Service seated. The Ghana National Fire Service also seated closely by leading officers of the police administration led by the IGP, as well as DCOP Yohonu. More importantly, other dignitaries from other African countries coming in. I can see President Ruto, William Ruto of Kenya, just having gotten down from his official vehicle for this auspicious event. And Dr. Alinyaba, the presence of these important dignitaries, especially the heads of state, what does it signify for us for this important day?
Yeah, I already said that it's just a sign of how Ghana have been able to maintain its diplomatic relations with other countries in Africa and beyond. And it is credit to all the regimes from the beginning of the Fourth Republic and beyond up to this day. So it is something that is testament of how we have carried ourselves as a nation, as a beacon of democracy, so they say in the continent. Yeah. So it's something that we all enjoy as a country. If we had reached a point where we are having an important occasion like this and nobody around us seems to show enthusiasm by attending, and then other partners outside of Africa like the USA and Europe are not paying attention to what we are doing, then we should be worried about how we have carried ourselves as a nation, both in terms of diplomatic relations with other countries and the benefits thereof.
And Pagwef, we've come to a point in our democracy where it looks like, despite I have to say, is it a rank cross election? We still have the presence of the vice president who outgone now, who was a presidential candidate of the MPP as well, and then former president John Ejakunku, all of them there, just trying to lend credence to the fact that we have a united front when it comes to our democracy, right?
It's a lot more solidarity. And for me, I must really commend the former president, John Ejakunku, who is a statesman for this country, and also commend the outgoing vice president, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, together with the wife, the second lady, and to state that it's important that when we are done with our partisan political campaigning and trying to use that as a vehicle to come into a national office, when all of that is done, we are one people. And just to state that I'm glad that John Dramani Mahama is being given the support, because he didn't give this support in years past. You recall he didn't attend the swearing-in of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in the 2021 swearing-in. He didn't congratulate Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I mean, but all of that is gone into history. But we should learn from these. These are statements that rallies the rank and file of the grassroots. I mean, when the grassroots sees this level of commandery, and we have always stated that we have a lot of peace amongst ourselves at a very higher echelon. So as politicians, you will see that I would exchange pleasantries with my opposite political person, MPP, NDC, CPP, and the likes. But if that does not trickle down to the grassroots, then we have a lot of admiration to go to. And I'm glad that this is happening. And so it clearly tells you that the rank and file of the New Patriotic Party is congratulating the president-elect John Dramani Mahama and the first female vice president, Professor Jane Nano Opoku-Agyeman. And we should all learn from this in the future. If you lose an election and you have to be part of it just for the nationalistic stake, I think that is critically very important. And
as Dr. Palgrave Boakye-Danquah ends there, pomp and pageantry well represented in the short now. The Asantehene, his delegation, and also just representing why Ghana as a country, we have been able to unite across all fronts. But in certain times within elections, Professor Kobi Mensah, we take a look at sometimes some of those rank cross periods. We seem to think that the peace is just so thin, just on the other side.
I mean, the democracy is an adversarial game.
Yeah.
You know, it's a battle of ideas. And nowhere would you find democracy that you wouldn't find that kind of, so to speak, the rancorous, moments. Obviously, immediately the decision is made, everybody goes back to the table, and then we judge going forward to govern the country. So it is part of the entire processes. You have to debate in a manner that can win you the power, all right, and that actually brings tensions. But we should also be reflective of our structure, the social structure of this country, which obviously had contributed, to the kind of democracy or the kind of environment that we have. Don't forget, not every country participates in a very heated democratic practices and still keep the country, intact. There are countries that have gone through the democratic path, but they end up fighting, in terms of proper fighting. I mean, not this kind of choices of words, etc., but throwing blows and ending up, splitting the country in a manner that is not, expected of a democratic country. Don't forget, just in Cote d'Ivoire, recent memories tell us how, politics, in the name of democratic, engagement, actually, brought a very beautiful country to that level that we've never had before. I mean, I lived in Cote d'Ivoire sometime, and I loved the way it was. Just to later on see that the country was in tatters, you wouldn't want to, see that. But you see, we have to give credit to our systems these traditional structures are very important. Our social structures are very important. The other time, I just sent a piece, and I'm sure that maybe it will be out tomorrow in the Daily Graphic about a very critical reflection of how Ghana's society has grown. And I was making references to the emergence of charismatic and Pentecostalism. All right, my argument. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ali Nyaba, as well as Dr. Pagre Bwachidankwa, Professor Kobe Mensah as well. But again, just to give you a recap, currently the motorcade of the president-elect, again, just being interspersed in the shots, but also a number of dignitaries already also arriving. You have he himself also coming onto the ground, John Dramani Mahama, already also Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, and also with the entourage making themselves present, making their way onto the ground. But just by way of recap, to tell you that traditional regalia, well represented, your Tumfo Setu the second, the entourage he's leading, already on the ground there, making way to find their seats, has to be ushered, well coordinated by the committee alongside the State Protocols Department. And we also do know the king of the Asogli State, the Agbogbomafia, and we also have him coming in there. That's Togbi Afede, and we also have the Gamanche, King Taki Churu the second, also in there alongside the president of the National House of Chiefs, Ojiaoho Yaujebi. Now, apart from that, we have, as announced, a number of dignitaries who have come in, various heads of states, also representing their various presidents and governments across not only the continent, but also the world, all there. And President William Ruto, we just told you some few minutes ago, has already presented himself, arrived safely. And then Jacob Zuma, former president South Africa, right here in Ghana. Alongside, we have the various heads of the various security services, not only the Ghana Armed Forces, the Ghana Police Service, the Ghana National Fire Service, and all of them ready, and the team who are leading the dispatch for the incoming president, the president to be sworn in, also having those live pictures being interspersed in this great coverage by TV3, 3FM 92.7, streaming live, and you can always now. And it is not only the neighborhood, but the whole of Accra also paying homage and then also host to this great event, but also unified by the other 15 regions across the country where you're watching TV3 and the rest of the world. But please know that you have to stay right here. TV3 Ghana, across social media, 3FM 92.7. The next team will take over, and the great event that we're bringing to you live from the Blaster Square will be brought to you with great information, with all the things that need to be known, the personalities who are there, the various heads of the institutions of Ghana and across the world who are there. Currently in the pics, we have the various heads of the Ghana Armed Forces, the Chief of Defense Staff, as well as the other ranking leading officers of the Ghana Armed Forces, as well as just close by the Ghana Police Service led by Dr. Ekufu Dampare, the IGP. And then just next to the police service, we have the Ghana National Fire Service. And the next team certainly will be taking over, bringing to you this live coverage. This live coverage from TV3, and then we also are informing you about all that you need to do by sharing our stream. Let us know what you think about this event. Blaster Square is where the main event is taking place, the presidential inauguration of John Dramani Mahama. So far, the Ghana Dance Ensemble have been giving to the attendees as well as viewers great renditions through their big phantom from drums and giving renditions of music. Also, we have big cultural troops, not only from the Ghana Dance Ensemble, but also various cultural groupings who also are making display of a number of activities. So far, we've had some interactions. Komla Kluche, Armstrong, all the grounds, giving to you vivid picture live with the dignitaries as well as the various heads from across the continent, not only presidents, but also those from the various parliaments of the continent, others also representing their various governments, and this is a sight to behold. The Ghana Police Service, the State Protocol Department, the National Security, making sure today is secured and well served to make sure that the security of state, the democracy for the Fourth Republic is well consolidated, well represented through this historic event. So far, a number of dignitaries in there, 21 heads of state, vice presidents, representing also various parliaments across the African continent and the world, all right here. And apart from former President John Ejekum Kufuor, we also have the outgoing Vice President of the Republic, Dr. Mahama Inauguration, who also in the last election was the presidential candidate of the NPP. He is there alongside the former second lady, or the outgoing second lady, Samira Bawumia. A number of important events also taking place alongside this very great event at the Blaster Square. Now, for the U.S. delegation sent by the U.S. President Joe Biden, it's led by Virginia Palmer, who is the resident ambassador representing the government of the United States, Virginia Palmer, and then also having representatives and from the Los Angeles Mayoral Office, and then also the U.S. Budgetary Office led by Shalanda Young, among others who are also at this great event. The European Union, they've sent a delegation as well. You can find also in your pictures Akuya Sana Danswa, a former member of parliament for North Dying, and then other dignitaries also making their way onto the ground. The inaugural event for President-elect John Dramani Mahama, as well as the Vice President-elect Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Just in case you're watching either on the streams of 3FM 92.7, as you're also listening, or also watching right here on TV3, please make sure you share the stream. The various heads of the security services also there, just making sure that the right things are done, marching through. Also very historic and important, President outgoing as he would be, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, having some interactions on the seat, as well as where he's seated on the dais with a number of dignitaries. And this is beautiful. Ghana's Fourth Republic being heralded, being historically shepherded by great security, great event right here for this event that is taking place. The outgoing president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the incoming president, President-elect John Dramani Mahama, and where else can you get it than right here on TV3, also listening on 3FM. If you're watching the streams, please make sure you share. Great history being made today, and also telling you how far we have come. Since 1992, following the ushering in of the 1992 Constitution as promulgated and again put together by the Consultative Assembly, we've had since 1993 great history made with the first president of the Fourth Republic, who had transitioned from being chairman of the Provisional National Defense Council, the PNDC, to be the presidential candidate of the NDC, to be elected and then sworn in as president, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, and subsequently John Agyekum Kufuor, the turn of the millennium, the year 2000, winning that election, sworn into office January 7, 2001, succeeded by Professor John Evans Atta Mills, again January 7, 2009, and then subsequently John Dramani Mahama, succeeding Professor Evans Atta Mills, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo following through, being sworn into office after winning the 2016 presidential elections on the 7th of January 2017. And here we are today, the 7th of January 2025. Historic as it is. The comeback of the former president as the president-elect and the national chief imam, Nuhu Shaributu, Sheikh Nuhu Shaributu, also at the grounds. Very important. And Joseph Akable, historic. You take a look at where we have traveled from in the Fourth Republic, you'd say that the numbers count, but also the events are very important, and how we've been able to, as a country, maintain these events up to today, the 7th of January 2025, the presidential inauguration.
Roland, very big day indeed. I mean, it's historic as you've classified it, and I don't think that there's any other word beyond that captures it accurately. I mean, since 1992, when this current constitutional dispensation took off, what we have seen is a conscious effort by the people of Ghana to ensure that, one, they go to the polls and cast the ballot, and two, to ensure that there's a peaceful transition where necessary. We saw the very first one post the 2000 elections when John Agyekum Kufuor took over from the exiting Jerry John Rawlings. We saw quite a lot of history being made, meetings that were taking place at the castle between political opponents that hitherto were seen to be enemies and were not individuals whom you could find in the same room, interact with each other, and also take over the affairs of government. Since then, we did it again in 2008. We were able to do it again in 2016. And back here again, we are doing it again in 2020. I mean, entering 2025 now. And so it's been one journey that the nation has been on for a while now. We've learned a lot of lessons from it, and it keeps getting smoother by the day. I mean, this time around, thankfully, what took place in Parliament was quite important. It was quite a peaceful process that took place as compared to the other parliaments in terms of the key events. And we need to state quite clearly that this is an event that is actually a parliamentary session, because under Article 53 of the Constitution, the president-elect is to take the oath of office and oath of allegiance in Parliament. The constitutional provision says before Parliament, which means that in the presence of Parliament. And so that takes place in Parliament. And we saw in the earlier republics when, if we pick Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, for instance, taking the oath before the National Assembly, and same happened within the Busia era as well. But since the Rawlings era, we have it taking place at Independence Square. And so it becomes an extension of parliamentary business, but it takes place at a larger Independence Square. And so last night and early morning, those who were monitoring what was taking place in the Chamber of Parliament live on TV3 as part of our coverage, you recall that when they had finished with the election of the Speaker and that of the first and second Deputy Speaker, the Speaker of Parliament did indicate that he was adjourning proceedings to the Independence Square. And so that is the continuous session of Parliament that will be taking place this morning, where the President-elect, John Dramani Mahama, and the Vice President-elect, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, will be taking their oath of office and will be formally taking over. The argument has always been made that, look, between when the election of the Speaker takes place and when the swearing in of the President takes place, there are those who have made the point that there's a bit of a constitutional gap of sorts. I mean, in that within a couple of hours, we do not have a president because the tenure of the exiting president would have lapsed. Fortunately for Parliament, immediately it lapsed just within about an hour or two. The House is able to get its Speaker in place if there's no crisis. And that is how come the previous Parliament, when that transition was taking place and there were disagreements and there were back and forth among the members, there was a concern that, look, what will happen? Because it will mean that the House potentially will wake up in the morning and there will not be any Parliament, there will not be any executive. We'll just have a judiciary in place headed by the Chief Justice. But, I mean, fortunately, it is just for a couple of hours. The House rose sometime around almost 3 to 4 a.m. there. And now we have the session that is taking place now. We expect that, look, between now and let's say some couple of hours' time, we expect the session to take off. It's now 10 a.m., so we still do not have a president in place, but a couple of hours' time, we expect that swearing to take place for the president-elect to take office. You had also make the point that in the interim, who takes over? Number 3, or which other number? I mean, we've heard Abam Gbaben describe himself as such, and so it's a very important national event that is taking place. From the pictures that we are bringing you from the Independence Square, we see an attempt to make the venue also look a bit different from how it looked in previous years. And so this time around, there's a bit of a covering which ordinarily didn't exist. We've seen also an attempt to try and limit the inner perimeter as much as possible so that there's more or less an identifiable space where you can have the parliamentary session taking place. And so that is also a very good thing that we've seen taking place there. Lots of dignitaries, not just from within the country, but beyond as well, the African continent coming over to participate. I see Dr. Valerie Sawyer in your shot a couple of seconds ago. She has already been named as a senior presidential advisor on governance matters. In the previous administration, she was a deputy chief of staff. I see a powerful man of God also behind her there. So it's a very big event. I mean, all those who matter in the country who can't make it or have been invited or have accreditation to be at that particular event are able to attend and witness what is happening at the Independence Square. The first time we are having a lot of first. I mean, I must say, we are going to have a first time female vice president take the oath of office and take the office. I see former First Lady Rebecca Akufo-Addo, Her Excellency, close. Immediate past, yes. Immediate past, yes. And close by was the now former president. Exactly. The now former president. The freshest former president. Yes.
Soon to be former president.
Yes. I mean, I can bring
let's wait for that.
Martin and Kemini. So I'm joined by my colleagues Martin Esielu-Date and Kemini Amano. Martin, your reflections so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, first of all, kudos to the organizers. It's looked very, very well coordinated. Right from the onset when we saw the canopies going up, the laying of the green carpet, I think they are trying to represent the colors of the national flag as much as possible. And so the floor where most of the dignitaries will be walking on is green. And then you have the topmost part of the canopies being red, and then a few yellow patches around just to, you know, trumpet the specific colors of the Black Stars, which has dominated a lot of African flags, if you pay particular attention. And many of them have been attributed to what the former president of the Republic, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, started. So they thought that, I mean, there are some scholars who have said that the red, gold, green that runs through many of the African flags is as a result of the influence of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah on the continent, who we can also attribute the continental unity of a single Africa to. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was actually strongly pushing that agenda of a united Africa based on those colors, etc. But as we speak, many people look very excited to be part of this momentous, you know,
event
segment of our growing democracy. And as of now, we are told that about 21 heads of states from different countries have shown interest. Many of them have arrived. I'm told that 2 or 3 more are yet to be picked up from the airport, and then they will come straight to the event grounds. And again, the organizers have clearly demarcated. So if you do not have accreditation or a certain type of accreditation, you can't just access any and everywhere. And so many of the locals or people around who would want to observe this are sat under the main shed that is at the Independence Square. Then the canopies and tents that have been built are for the special dignitaries and invited guests who will be filling up those places. And so on your screens now, you can see the members of the judiciary going to take their seats, filing to go take their seats. Again, the head of the judiciary, that is Her Ladyship Gertrude Tokonu, yesterday was in Parliament to swear in the Speaker. It was quite interesting, the developments in Parliament from last night. Many of them are also expected here to actually form a parliament. So the president can only be sworn in the presence of Parliament. So on these grounds, Parliament is expected to actually sit and start proceedings, and then it will be on the back of that the president will be sworn in.
So just a reminder in terms of where we are with the event, the order of proceedings as has been made available from the organizers, it starts with all guests being seated. The members of the diplomatic corps, they are also seated as well. Then you have members of parliament seated. Then from there, there is the arrival of the former presidents, then arrival of invited heads of state. Then the next step becomes Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice and Justice of the Superior Court, enter the chamber and take their seats. And so that is where we are currently in terms of the event. And so
it's also safe to say that the event is about 21 minutes late, because based on the brochure, at 10 a.m. we should see the Right Honourable Speaker calling the House to order. We expect that to take place in a tad. And you were talking about, Martin, about the colour coding, and the colour coding is meant to also direct the dignitaries where they should sit.
Right.
We know that one of the yellow tents will be for the incoming First Lady and her family, you know, the first family, so to speak. On the other hand, will be where the parliamentarians will also sit when the Speaker calls the House to order. We know that the other tents are also for the dignitaries, depending on where you're coming from, whether it's a mission or you know, it's an embassy, so to speak. And so the color coding, very much like the flag, but it's also specific to direct people where they will sit today. As they have already packed the place, you can see that, listen, we are almost there with the new government. Once that swearing in takes place, it's a different era for this country. And you know, when people talk about the history, the historic nature of the event, it's a lot of attention on the return of a former president. We don't talk a lot about the fact that there is also a very first female vice president.
You're absolutely right.
You know, because it's absolutely huge deal for this continent.
It is.
A continent where many women are emerging as leaders of the country. It's good to know that we are inching closer to that. We have our very first female vice president. Earlier in the year, Namibia had chosen its very first female president. And so it's good to know that we're here on the doorstep of doing the same thing for women in this country.
And I think I agree with Kemini perfectly. It's a significant step in that a lot of the times when you're aiming for the roof and beyond. And now there's a certain level that you can look beyond now. You can't wake up and think that, look, I want to be the first female president. You know that that is the level that you have to take us to. You know that the issue of the first female vice president is done and dusted.
Indeed.
We're going to have her in a couple of hours. And
Absolutely.
so it's a very significant step, and it should always be a shining example for a lot of young girls across the country. I don't know what, Alfred, you think of that? Alfred,
welcome to the party.
That, really, thank you guys. We always have this conversation about female representation in politics after the horse has bolted, really. Because before we get into an election, you know, we'll talk about it, you know, once a while. But then afterwards, then we start saying how many MPs who are female have been elected into this 9th parliament. In fact, if you look at the numbers as of the dawn of today, when the roll call was made in parliament, the previous parliament we had 40. The number has reduced, unfortunately, Kemini. In this 9th parliament, even though there's an additional seat increasing the number of seats there to 276, the number of female representation, or the female MPs in this 9th parliament has also reduced, and that's one thing that is not quite encouraging for us, you know. But then again, the most important aspect of all of this, as we're talking about today, is to see Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman become the first female vice president. That is a boost to our democratic credentials as a country and as a people, if you look at the continent as well. And as we're seeing right now on the screen, a number of the dignitaries still arriving. We have a number of the heads of states and then also their vice presidents in town. And one to look out for as well, as we're seeing, we have a former president of the People's Republic of Nigeria also there. We have the president of Nigeria himself as well, and there the former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, is also here in present. We also have the Belgian foreign minister also present in there, and the delegation of the United States President Joe Biden. That's also he's an outgoing president himself, you know, also in there as well. And then we have the Virginia Palmer, who's the U.S. ambassador to Ghana, also present in there. In fact, we have a strong delegation from the UK as well. And as we go on, we'll have a conversation with the UK Minister in charge of Africa. He's also in town, and we'll be having a conversation with him as we go on here on your election command center.
And on your screen at the moment is the Chief Justice who will be swearing in the President-elect. And, over the years, in moments like this, you hardly see the activities of the outgoing President. We saw him a while ago with his, as he refers to her, my beautiful wife, Rebecca. And
you need the cue card. You need the cue card.
Well, so, I mean, Martin, we are currently at the stage where we are expecting the Right Honourable Speaker's procession to enter the chamber. And so that is the stage where we are now. We already completed the other stage in terms of the Chief Justice and the Justice of the Superior Courts coming in to take their seats. And so the next step that we expect to happen is that the Speaker will come in, will enter the chamber. All members were expected to rise to receive him. Then the Speaker will take his chair, then he will call the House to order. And so then that becomes a formal parliamentary session. Then the majority and minority leaders, at the invitation of the Speaker, will join the procession to receive HE, the President-elect, and HE, the Vice President-elect, to the House. And the next step will be that the President-elect and the Vice President-elect will be conducted into the chamber. Then the oaths administration goes on as well. And so that is it by way of what we can expect within the next maybe 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, you forgot the first, speech to the people.
Yes.
The President would have to speak to us for the very first time. 8 years ago, we had a rather terrible experience after enjoying such a beautiful speech. We know what took place afterwards, and so we'll be very keen on marking.
You want to say that we later found out that half the speech was plagiarized. You didn't want to go there.
but I mean, the point I'm making is we'll be very keen on listening to the incoming president, because whatever he says on that at that moment will set the tone.
Very significant,
for how his government goes.
And it becomes the key speech that we are going to look out for at the end of the 4-year tenure. I mean, this is a president who will be doing one term, and I say so because if you remember that speech, beyond the concerns about the plagiarism that had taken place, that speech many thought was a defining moment because it was the speech that the Ghana Beyond Aid was loudly trumpeted. I mean, the verdict is out there. 8 years on, the verdict is out there. I mean, we don't have to argue about it at all. I mean, we know how things have been.
Remember, it was also the speech that encouraged the people to be citizens and not spectators.
Well, that falls within the plagiarized text, and so you can understand if you are still not, you have some concerns about it. You can still,
if we were not allowed to be citizens.
Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. But I mean, the keys, the significance of this particular address cannot be overemphasized. I mean,
absolutely.
We expect him to state quite clearly what his focus will be. And Mr. Mahama, in terms of His Excellency, I mean, during the campaign period, he had made a point strongly that he's an experienced hand. He's an experienced hand. He had been described by his political opponents as a second-hand driver. But the fact of the matter is that for the first time, we are going to have someone who is taking the oath, who has been president before. Mind you, he was at the presidency for 8 years, 4 as vice, 4 as president, then 8 years in opposition to see how Ghana has been managed, which in his opinion was mismanaged. He comes across with lots of experience.
I'm not sure it's just in his opinion,
so
is it? We have the verdict is out there, especially after the last.
Let's just put it out. The Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Alban Sumana Kingsford-Bagwin, has just arrived at the Independence Square where a parliamentary session is taking place right now. It's safe to say that he is the one who is going to preside over the parliamentary sitting today. Aside from the president-elect who's going to be sworn in today, he is the most important person at this gathering. If the Speaker hadn't arrived, we still cannot proceed with this particular swearing-in ceremony. So with the arrival of the Speaker, what you see there is the maize, and that has been set right before the Speaker's seat. The maize is standing upright. What that means is that all is well and the session can take place. If the maize had been swung anywhere beyond the middle, then we would have an issue. Exactly. Because the positioning of the maize communicates a particular situation. So as we see it now, the maize is standing upright. What that means is that parliamentary business is set to take place. The Speaker of Parliament went round and beckoned on his deputies as well. As we do know, yesterday, in fact, this the early hours of this morning, we had Bernard Ahiafo, who is the Akachi South Member of Parliament, sworn in as the first Deputy Speaker, and also the Member of Parliament in the Ashanti region, Fomena constituency specifically, Andrew Esiama Amoako, also sworn in as the second Deputy Speaker. In fact, he retained that particular position as second Deputy Speaker of Parliament from the 8th Parliament. He is the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament for this 9th Parliament as well. We're seeing as well Kofi Boakye, who was recently announced as part of the preparatory team for the Operation Recover All Loot Oral.
He's also part of
the security team as well. He has a lot to do in this administration. As a matter of fact, during the campaign as well, he was in charge of the security for the NDC in the Ashanti region. You see former National Security Coordinator Larry Bevlo-Lati as well in your shot. Kofi Totobi Kwachi as well, who was in charge of the Ashanti region security and operations for the NDC during the campaign. The former Finance Minister Setekpe as well, you just saw briefly in there. It is widely speculated, and that has not been disputed, that Kese Lato-Forson, all things being equal, may become the next finance minister. And you remember, Dr. Kese Lato-Forson deputized him as Setekpe while in office as finance minister. We haven't heard so much of Setekpe apart from the day he appeared here during
Alfred,
after the elections on December 7th.
Another interesting point to note was yesterday, the NDC, even as of now, do not have their front bench. The leadership of the NDC in Parliament is unknown. It is because what we've heard is that they are waiting to see if President-elect Mahama will appoint any of the front benches, the front benches from the 8th Parliament, whether or not any of them will be made ministers, because you wouldn't want to put all your eggs in one basket and maybe become the leader of the majority in Parliament, only for the President to also say, well, I actually thought I wanted you for this particular ministerial position. So they are hanging on more or less, because Kese Lato-Forson, the current majority leader, is likely to be, like you indicated, if all things stay constant, likely to be the incoming finance minister.
You know, yesterday we were having a conversation and we were making a point that if you were in his shoes, would you want to take the risk and have new leaders constituted and wait to see what happens? And what if you don't get any position as being expected? Then what happens then? It would mean
I'm sure at this level, there is a certain certainty. Yeah. There's a certain certainty of where they will lean towards. And it's also good to see former President John Agyekum Kufuor holding the Ghana flag. Some people are saying he seems rather more excited about the fact that the John Dramani Mahama and the NDC are going to be managing the affairs of the country at least for the next 4 years.
Why is that? Because he's smiling.
He had his own issues with the outgoing government.
He had serious issues with the MPP. And even in terms of the incoming government, you recall when he had endorsed Dr. Bawumia in the build-up.
Yes.
One of, if I could describe him as his protege of sorts.
Yes.
Absolutely. That was that interview that some 2 journalists had with him. A number of people thought that, look, that was a plan one that didn't really work according to plan. Many thought that he really descended into the background of that kind of politics that then drew him into the arena of insults, and he was really berated for what he did during that particular period. But it's also instructive to note as well that he still remains a key figure in the NPP. And going forward, as the NPP is talking about rebuilding, reorganizing into 2028, he's one person that you cannot overlook. He has his own caucus in this particular NPP as we have it. There are many who thought that the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo led NPP caucus did not treat the Kufuor caucus that well. So a number of persons who identified with his caucus really did not have a good time over the last 8-year period with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo at the helm of affairs. You've heard Boakye Jaku as well, the former energy minister, in that statement that he released. He says that there is this mindset that the party had been hijacked by one person who was behaving more like a Caesar. And so they need to seize their party back. Now, we'll see how things will play out in the coming days. Operation Recover Our Party, really.
Just a bit of information on the arrangements at the square. Your call Kemini was talking about the colors. And so we understand that the red branded canopy is for the judiciary invited guests, which includes outgoing ministers, party executives, and the diplomatic corps. And in terms of the green branded canopy, special envoys, invited presidents, former presidents, and governors. Then there are 3 other black branded ones. Those are for the parliamentarians and spouses and parliamentarian staff. Then there is also 3 other yellow canopies. The first one is for the NDC Functional Executive Committee members. The second is for the former vice president of Ghana and their spouses. And the middle yellow canopy is for the president-elect and vice president-elect, the CJ, and the speaker. And in front of that yellow canopy as an extended platform is for the clerk and marshal of parliament. And so as and when those parts of the venue become available, we would connect to you and recap on who specifically are the individuals who are supposed to take that part of the venue.
So arriving now is Julius Maada, who is the president of Sierra Leone. He is one of many presidents and heads of state who are expected to grace this all-important occasion. We have right now, as you're saying, the minority leader of the 9th Parliament. How time changes so fast.
The immediate past majority leader, Kemini and Martin, want to say.
You probably want to say it so he feels good. But as of this morning, he is the minority leader because the 9th Parliament has been sworn in. So effectively, Alexander Afenyomarkin is the minority leader
as an
of this
interesting man
Parliament.
you can see it. For those of you watching on TV, that is Jacob Zuma from South Africa. On your screens,
Martin, what do you do with the accent today?
It is interesting that we actually do have him in the country to support the swearing in of John Dramani Mahama, who a few days, just about 2 days after the final declaration, had to take a quick trip around a number of countries, so he reignites relationship.
There's an interaction he had with President Akufo-Addo at the presidency. I will say we managed to hear what they were talking about. Interestingly, when he met the outgoing president, we understand that the delegation from Equatorial Guinea are just arriving at the venue as well. And Martin, when he met the president, the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo, told him that you've been touring the continent a lot. You are traveling around. I see you traveling around. And you know his response? He said that, look, he wants to hit the ground running. And he does not want to travel once he takes over. So he wants to have time to settle immediately he takes over. And that is how come he was doing the tours that ordinarily he would be doing once he's taking office. And so that comes back to the point that we're making earlier on about the fact that, look, this is someone who is an experienced leader.
He's been there, he's done that. He knows the terrain. Of course, there might be a change or two based on what has happened in the last few years when he was in opposition. He didn't have direct access as president to some of the key decision makers on the continent and beyond. So it is instructive to especially many people who are watching, and based on the level of expectation of the president-elect, he had to quickly touch base with a number of the presidents of other countries, especially those that we have good bilateral relations with, to trigger or initiate conversations regarding what kind of assistance they can give us as a country now that he is about to take the realms of affairs of the country. And so it's part of why some of the countries he visited, those presidents have actually also decided to come down to support him in his inauguration. And we also have the leadership of the National Democratic Congress, the Chief of Staff, also sat together. So that is Johnson Esiedun Ketia, National Chairman of the NDC in white. On his right, we have Julius Debra, who is the Chief of Staff. That was not in doubt because he was Chief of Staff when Mahama was president and was actually his right-hand man throughout opposition. I am personally amazed that the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, is also in Ghana. I mean, it's amazing to have such dignified personalities on the continent come around to observe and grace the occasion. And some people of a certain level of repute have talked about how Ghana and Rwanda are the shining examples of what the continent can be if we are focused as a people in trying to help Africa out of its current doldrums and challenges. And Rwanda has been touted as a shining example on the continent. As we speak, many people have said, and personally I've also observed how Rwanda, their capital, Kigali, is the cleanest city on the continent, and President Paul Kagame has been very instrumental in getting the country that had serious genocide in 1994 come out of that genocide, and now a shining example on the continent. So it looks like Ghana is also on the same path.
Martin, I have been to Kigali before. It's a beautiful country.
Very beautiful.
And what's amazed me about Kigali is the fact that, look, the land space is not particularly flat like we have it in most parts of the country. It's quite a hilly area, but they've been able to build such that they make good use of space. And so because if you have a limited flat space, you go down a lot before you raise the building up. It's also a very, very clean country there, and so that is very important.
And it's the way they are orderly as a country that surprises me. And you know, so when I asked him what he thought about Ghana, he said that a lot of them were looking up to Ghana. And you know, Ghana and Rwanda also have a special relationship because Kwaku Anyidoho's father, coincidentally, happened to be one of the officers who was leading the delegation of soldiers at the time when they had the genocide there.
Well,
and
it's interesting. It's interesting how we're all talking about Rwanda with so much delight. Let's one day talk about Accra with such delight.
And that is why it's necessary to look at that example.
The president-elect John Dramani Mahama is arriving now at the venue that is the Independence Square, where the parliamentary session is taking place as we speak. So this is the moment all the persons, and in fact everyone watching us, has been waiting for. The president-elect John Dramani Mahama